Sound is one of the main survival tools of birds, considering that it is through it that they defend territory, attract mates, warn about dangers, and maintain social organization. However, not all birds use soft or harmonious songs for this, since around our world there are many of these animals that stand out precisely for producing strange and frightening sounds that completely stray from the patterns we are used to hearing so often. And it is exactly with this in mind that we have put together a list of some of them to present in today's video. Australian bustard. If someone said that one of the strangest sounds in Australian wildlife does not come from a reptile or a mammal, but from a gigantic bird, many people would doubt it. However, this is actually true, and the one responsible for it is the Australian bustard, one of the largest flying birds in Australia, and one that is famous for emitting hollow and deep vocalizations, especially during the breeding season, when males inflate their throats and project air in a controlled way, creating a resonance that can be heard over long distances across open fields. Really strange, right? When hearing this sound, many people often say that it closely resembles the roar of a lion, or the sound produced by some dinosaur, which technically speaking is not entirely wrong, considering that all birds that exist today are regarded as modern dinosaurs. Horned screamer. With a robust build, predominantly dark plumage, and a bony horn projecting from the top of its head, the horned screamer is a bird typical of wetland areas in South America, found in lagoons, floodplains, and marshes, where it can often be observed feeding on aquatic vegetation, which explains why these birds spend much of their time near water. The horned screamer usually lives in small groups or pairs and displays an attentive behavior toward its surroundings, reacting quickly to the presence of other animals or humans. For this reason, it is considered an indicator species of movement in rural areas, as it reacts in a loud and far from subtle way, emitting a high-pitched, harsh, and metallic call that is extremely strident, and serves both to alert other individuals and to intimidate potential threats. Common starling. Few birds adapt as well to living alongside humans as the common starling. Present in rural areas, open forests, and large urban centers across Europe, Asia, and some other regions where it has been introduced, it occupies virtually any environment where it can find shelter and food, and generally tends to live in massive flocks that create impressive visual and sound displays at the same time. However, beyond these characteristics, what truly makes this species special is its vocal ability, since instead of limiting itself to a single song, the common starling is one of the greatest imitators in the bird world.
Alexa, stop.
Starling. European starling. European starling.
That's right. This species is capable of reproducing the sounds of alarms, engines, sirens, mechanical noises, fragments of human melodies, and is even able to imitate other species, generating an unpredictable sound that mixes natural and artificial timbres in a spectacular way.
Gonna give him a kiss.
Gonna give him a kiss. my sweet turd?
My sweet turd bird.
Who's my precious jabby bird? I love you so much. My sweet baby bird. You're so funny. Do you need kisses?
Alexa, stop.
It's starling. European starling.
Who's my sweet jabby angel?
King penguin. Possessing contrasting plumage, with tones ranging between yellow, orange, black, and white, and reaching more than 90 centimeters in height, the king penguin is one of the largest and most elegant penguin species on the planet. It lives in sub-Antarctic regions, spending much of its life at sea and returning to land only to reproduce, a period during which it forms gigantic colonies, with thousands of individuals extremely close to one another, creating a visually impressive and biologically complex environment. In this scenario, within such enormous colonies, communication between individuals becomes a real challenge, especially when it comes to recognizing partners and chicks. To solve this, the king penguin developed long, vibrant vocalizations filled with tonal variations, which sound like a mixture of trumpets, moos, and metallic sounds. Most interesting of all is that, according to studies, each individual possesses its own vocal signature, allowing parents and chicks to identify each other amid the sonic chaos of the colonies, and thus creating one of the strangest acoustic environments in the animal kingdom. Kiwi. The kiwi is a flightless bird, known for the enormous size of its egg when compared to the size of its body, and also for having feathers that resemble hair more than the typical feathers of birds. In addition, these animals have another striking and special characteristic related to their beak, which plays an important role in their feeding within the environment. This is because the kiwi's beak is long and flexible, allowing it to be used to probe the soil in search of food, a particularly useful trait since the kiwi feeds mainly on worms, insects, larvae, and small invertebrates found in the forest floor. To finish, as if all these unusual and quite distinctive characteristics were not already more than enough to define the kiwi as a truly strange bird, these animals also possess another peculiarity related to the highly unusual sound they can produce, which in some cases can even end up frightening unsuspecting people at night. Rusty-barred owl. Present mainly in dense forests of Brazil, where low light levels and closed vegetation favor its nocturnal lifestyle, the rusty-barred owl is a bird that displays brown plumage with light bars, allowing it to blend easily with trunks and branches during the day, which explains why it is rarely noticed when at rest. This discreet behavior also extends to its hunting activity, since at nightfall, the rusty-barred owl begins to move silently through the environment in search of small mammals, birds, and insects, using its extremely sharp hearing to locate prey in the darkness. In this way, by relying so heavily on sound to orient itself, vocal communication becomes an essential tool within its territory, and it is precisely in this context that its long, deep calls arise, composed of spaced notes that echo through the forest during the night. Montezuma oropendola. Few tropical birds display such an active social behavior as the Montezuma oropendola. This is because this distinctive bird is known for living in colonies and for building long, pendulous nests in tall trees, usually gathered in large groupings that concentrate intense activity throughout the day. Within this collective environment, disputes over territory and mates are constant, leading males to develop conspicuous forms of display that include body movements and frequent vocalizations, and at several moments they even hang upside down from branches while vocalizing, expanding the visual and acoustic reach of these displays. Swinhoe snipe. The Swinhoe snipe is a little-known migratory bird, precisely because it spends much of its time camouflaged in wetland areas of East Asia, such as marshes, flooded fields, and lake shores, with its plumage in shades of brown and beige, allowing it to remain practically invisible when standing still on the ground, which makes it difficult to observe even in regions where it is relatively common. However, all of this discreet behavior of the Swinhoe snipe is completely set aside at the moments when it decides to reveal the distinctive and unusual sound it is capable of producing, a sound that can certainly be defined as one of the strangest produced by birds, securing it a place on this list. Short-tailed antthrush. Solitary and quite discreet, the short-tailed antthrush is a bird that lives mainly on the ground of humid and dense forests, with a preference for Atlantic forest areas, slopes, and high-altitude regions, where it moves through low vegetation without drawing attention and feeds mainly on insects and small invertebrates found on the ground. This terrestrial habit causes the short-tailed antthrush to be rarely seen in open areas, which explains why, even though it is present in many regions, it is little known to the general public. In addition, because it lives in this closed environment with limited visibility, it is a species that relies more on sound than on sight to communicate and maintain territory. And this is precisely why, when its loud and metallic call, which resembles the sound of a small bell being rung repeatedly, emerges in the middle of the forest, it creates such an impact. Common eider. Spending most of its life in open sea, the common eider, like the king penguin we have already seen, is another bird that only approaches land during the breeding period, when it forms colonies on rocky islands and isolated coastal areas. In these locations, the female uses materials available around her, such as dried algae, twigs, grass, and moss, to form the shallow base of the nest, and after laying the second or third egg, she begins to pluck her own down from her chest, which is the softest and most insulating, to line the nest, thus creating a thick and fluffy layer that retains body heat so efficiently that the eggs remain warm even when she briefly leaves to drink water or defend herself. In this way, this colonial lifestyle and the constant proximity among individuals of the species make communication an important factor in maintaining basic social organization, both in the water and on land, and thus the unusual and easily distinguishable sound of the common eider can be heard in coastal environments, especially during courtship and in disputes over space and chick protection. Gunnison sage-grouse. Another bird that relies heavily on sound communication during the breeding season is the Gunnison sage-grouse. Found living in open fields of the western United States, this species spends much of the year relatively quiet and discreet, blending into low vegetation and avoiding drawing attention. However, this pattern changes completely during the breeding season, when males gather in open areas known as leks to compete for females through highly specific body displays. During these displays, they inflate their chest air sacs, raise their feathers, and perform repetitive movements, creating a well-defined choreography. And it is at this moment that one of the strangest and most unique sounds in the animal kingdom emerges. Spectacled owl. Active mainly at night, the spectacled owl is a bird that inhabits tropical forests of Central and South America, where it remains almost always hidden among the tree canopies, with its large size and big eyes giving the species a striking appearance, yet one that is rarely observed up close due to its reserved behavior. However, far beyond its distinctive appearance, another peculiarity of this bird is related to the unusual sound effect it is capable of producing, which is so striking that, in many regions, the sound of the spectacled owl is more widely known than the bird itself. Australian magpie. Recognized for its territorial and highly aggressive behavior, the Australian magpie is a bird that occupies open areas, urban parks, and rural regions of Australia, where it frequently interacts with humans and, unlike many birds, is not a species limited to simple vocalizations, considering that it possesses a surprisingly complex sound repertoire. Socially active, it usually lives in family groups and uses sound as its main tool for internal organization, predator alerts, and territory defense, with individuals commonly observed vocalizing for long periods, especially during the early morning hours, producing sounds that include long whistles, elaborate melodic variations, and imitations of environmental noises, forming truly complex compositions. Common potoo. Found mainly in open areas, forest edges, savannas, and tree-lined urbanized areas, from Costa Rica to Argentina, including the entire Brazilian territory, the common potoo is a bird that has extremely efficient camouflage and, for this reason, usually spends the entire day motionless on trunks or branches, adopting an upright posture that makes it truly look like part of the tree, a behavior that makes it practically invisible in daylight, even when it is just a few meters away. However, at nightfall it becomes active and goes out to capture insects in full flight, taking advantage of the darkness to move without being noticed, and it is also during this period that its long, sad, and prolonged calls, which closely resemble a distant lament, can frequently be heard in many South American forests. Barred owl. Relying heavily on sound to orient itself and communicate, the barred owl is a bird that inhabits forests of North America, where it remains active mainly at night, while during the day its medium size and barred plumage are enough to provide it with remarkable camouflage among tree trunks, ensuring that it remains almost imperceptible. However, this species also has a major distinguishing feature related to the unusual and distinctive sound it is capable of producing, with calls composed of rhythmic series of deep spaced notes, earning it a place among the birds with the strangest vocalizations in the world. European nightjar. Another bird that becomes active mainly at dusk and during the night is the European nightjar, which, as in other cases we have already seen so far, is a species that generally only goes out to hunt at night, while during the day it spends much of its time motionless on the ground or on branches, where its camouflage plumage makes it difficult to be noticed. In this way, by relying on darkness to move and feed, sound communication takes on a fundamental role in the routine of these birds, especially during the breeding season, when there is a need to attract mates and delimit territory without visual exposure, and thus its continuous, vibrating, and prolonged sound, which can last several minutes without interruption, can be heard in the regions where this species lives. Potoo. Endowed with a great vocal capacity, the potoo is a bird native to New Zealand, where it can be found occupying forests, open areas, and even urban gardens. And in addition to its sound behavior, it is also known for its beautiful appearance. Because it is highly territorial and socially active, the potoo uses sound as its main tool for defense, communication, and display, and for this reason, spends long periods vocalizing throughout the day, which makes this constant activity render its presence noticeable even when the bird is not visible. Sharpbill. Reserved in behavior, the sharpbill is a bird that inhabits dense forests of Central and South America, remaining almost always in the middle and upper layers of the vegetation, where it spends long periods practically motionless, which causes it to rarely draw visual attention. However, despite all this physical discretion, this bird becomes highly noticeable in moments when it enters vocal activity, especially during the breeding season, when males begin to communicate intensely to mark territory and attract females, and thus emit a loud and metallic sound, described by many people as similar to the sound of a whistling kettle or a falling bomb.
Can you get my stuff on it, Brian?
Siberian crane. Threatened with extinction and restricted to specific areas of Russia and Central Asia, the Siberian crane is a bird that carries out long annual migrations between breeding and wintering regions and can be found living in open wetland areas, where it forms long-lasting pairs and maintains strong bonds between individuals. During breeding and also in territorial defense, sound communication plays an essential role in coordination among individuals of this species, and thus, in these situations, the long, powerful, and resonant sound of the Siberian crane, with tonal variations that give each individual its own identity, can be heard over great distances. Lyrebird. And to finish, let's talk about the lyrebird, a species famous for its ornamental tail, but which also stands out for being one of the birds with the greatest sound imitation ability in the animal world. Found in forests of Australia, where it spends much of its time on the ground, turning over leaves in search of insects and small invertebrates. This bird possesses a vocal repertoire that includes almost perfect imitations of other birds, mammals, camera shutters, chainsaws, alarms, baby cries, and various artificial sounds. And although females are also capable of producing these sounds, the individuals most famous for using this ability are the males of the species, which perform long displays that combine body movements with extremely elaborate vocal sequences, intended to impress females and drive away rivals during the breeding season. And for you, which bird had the most surprising and fantastic sound on this list? Leave a comment telling us which one impressed you the most. And if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with all the content we bring here. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.